Wild Woodbury is a rewilding project near Bear Regis in Dorset, which started in the autumn of 2021. It's an exciting example of an intensively farmed landscape being transformed to increase carbon sequestration and restore biodiversity. You can see how the project has already had an impact at Woodbury in a video linked at the end of this one, where you'll also find links to some of ZCD's other output, including a short introduction to Zero Carbon Dorset. The talk you are about to see was given by Seb Haggett as part of the launch event for ZCD's Dorset 2030 report. The description below contains links to the full report and to the specific chapter on land use. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments section, and please click like and subscribe buttons to boost our YouTube profile. Thank you.
Seb, good evening. So yeah, I'm Seb. I work for the Dorset Wildlife Trust. I'm the Wilder Dorset Community Ranger. So I'm working on their new rewilding project, Wild Woodbury near Bear Regis in Wareham. I've only been with the trust for about 3.5 months, but been working in conservation work since leaving uni, kind of with BCB Council, National Trust, and now with the Wildlife Trust. So I haven't got time to kind of go into depth about rewilding, but I thought it was important just to kind of get a brief overview to start with. And this is probably a quote that many of you will be familiar with. It's taken from Rewilding Britain website. And rewilding is the large-scale restoration of ecosystems to the point where nature is allowed to take care of itself. Rewilding seeks to reinstate natural processes and, where appropriate, missing species, allowing them to shape the landscape and the habitats within. It's focused firmly on the future, although we can learn from the past. And this is really what we're looking to do at Wild Woodbury. So this is the site. It's just on the outskirts of Bear Regis. It's a minute walk for some people to get to, and it covers 170 hectares, or approximately 420 acres. So we've divided this site up into 4 kind of main areas, which we'll take a brief look at in a bit more detail and see what we're planning to do on site. It really is great for people to get to, close for the community, and also on a really good commuter route as well. It's right by the A35. So even people come down on holiday, get to stop off at a rewilding site, immerse themselves in nature, get connected, and then travel on their way. So before us, this land was an intensive farm. They had 35 cows there, kept on one of the fields, and then used the rest of the site to grow feed, just to feed these cows. So there wasn't really a lot of food being produced on this site, especially for all the inputs being put on there, all the chemicals, all the ploughing, all the topsoil loss, and all the drainage of the fields. So the first little area, so this is the closest to the village itself. And this kind of constitutes what used to be many years ago the old Court Green, where they'd hold kind of Mayfair events and kind of get-togethers. It's the farm cottages, and then it's also the old farm buildings. Now we're looking to have this really as a place to welcome people back onto the land, hopefully as kind of wildflower meadows in years to come, a big archway saying, come back onto the land that you've been excluded from for so many years. The agricultural buildings are in a bit of a dire state, to be honest. They're full of random stuff, old grain stores full of asbestos and random pits. So they're going to go, but it gives us this great opportunity to rebuild, be it a cafe, a village hall, a green service station. Kind of the options really are kind of endless here, and it's something we're really looking to work with the community with to see what they want, and also the wider Dorset community to kind of have as a community hub really at the entrance to this site. The second area, this is a bit of a random one. This is completely disconnected from the rest of the site. It's disconnected by a 60-mile-an-hour road. So as much as we'd like to kind of cattle grid across and have it as one connected unit, it's probably not going to be possible. So we might just leave it to kind of naturally regenerate into what would be eventually woodland. We might have it as kind of a livestock area where we can hold them before putting them on the site for rewilding. And there's also been the idea mused that we could have kind of water buffalo. They've been shown elsewhere in the country to do quite a good job at restoring little patches of wetland. And it is naturally very wet. So this is also another possibility. So as we get into the kind of the main areas on site, this strip of land here, this is going to be the main public access. So this is about 40 acres. And we're just going to take all the fences down and just say, there you go, you're allowed back on, welcoming them back onto the land after they've been excluded for about 900 years. And it's going to provide this vital green space where they can come, immerse themselves in nature and kind of reap the benefits of being surrounded by wildlife. We're going to let this naturally regenerate, so without any grazing, so it will eventually become a woodland. But we're not going to, say, put any paths in, for example. We'll just let people walk, and wherever they walk will be the paths or the woodland rides of the future. We held a community drop-in day to kind of see what people would want to see in this area. We kind of, do they want us to cut glades? Do they want benches? And what really struck me was the surprise that people had that they were actually being asked. They were so taken aback that we wanted their opinions, that they'd been excluded from this land for so long, they didn't really know what to say and didn't really have an answer to give. And I think this really goes to show how much people have been excluded from the land in the county and also in the country as a whole. I think it's 93% of land where is private, and I think it goes up to about 97% for water. It really, really is ridiculous. And this is one of the reasons we're so excited to have this community project so local to Bear Regis, where we can get the community involved and the wider Dorset community to open up this space for them to come back into. So the kind of the main bulk of the site, so this is going to be the main rewilding unit. Historically, it was the fields that we used to grow crops on. So a mix of kind of barley, maize, Italian ryegrass and pasture. It had very high inputs, lots of chemicals, lots of fertilizers, and it's in a pretty poor way, to be honest. We're looking to connect this. So we'll kind of punch holes through some hedges to make it one big interconnected unit. We'll leave it about a year to grow, and then we'll introduce old breed livestock to try and make it this one kind of big dynamic landscape. We're going to have to do a bit of work with the water. So this site is naturally very wet, but it's been extensively drained for many years, and kind of every field margin has a 2 to 3 meter ditch running down it. So this is something we're working with hydrologists to see where we can fill in the ditches and really look to renaturalize the hydrology of the site. We're pretty much holding the headwaters of the River Sherford. So when we renaturalize it, we're carrying out something called stage 0 river restoration, effectively what beavers do, just without the beavers. And we'll let the water flow where it wants to flow. And we're hoping to have about 40 acres of wetland. Now, what this will look like, will it be kind of ephemeral pools? Will it be a transitional wetland? Will it be standing water? Will it just be boggy land? We don't know. But whatever it's going to be, that's going to be great for locking up more carbon, locking up more nitrogen, as well as providing an extra habitat and extra niches for different species on this landscape. So these are the kind of things we'll introduce. We're working with a local farmer. So she's going to buy in the livestock for us. She's going to do all the husbandry, take care of them. She's going to get free grazing on our site. She'll get the money from any sales of any meat. But then we get the animals without having to do any of the husbandry. So it's a really nice partnership that we're kind of involved with. And I think this is incredibly important because we're not a massive site for rewilding in rewilding terms. So working with the locals and getting the community involved is such an important aspect of it. Yes, we're going to have a difference in the local kind of wildlife. Are we going to change the nature makeup of the country? No, but we're going to provide this great local green space, help nature locally, and most importantly, hopefully educate, inspire other people to do the same. And with working with this local farmer, I think it's hopefully going to show to other farmers that they can diversify and still make a profit. This lady is going to be able to probably produce about the same amount of food that was being produced on the land previously, but whilst also getting the nature benefits at the same time. And she's going to be, by grazing the site, she'll be getting conservation grazed meat, sell for a higher price. And I think it's something that we need to do a lot around the country. There's so much farmland that isn't suitable for farming. This land isn't suitable for farming. It's so wet. And it will just show that you can work with people to benefit nature. We produce plenty of food in this country, and we can do both together, benefit nature, and also for farmers still make money. What are we expecting in years to come? Well, we're currently carrying out baseline surveys kind of across all taxa. This is just a few examples of what we've seen on site so far. So like woodcock, grass snakes, and cobalt blue crust fungus, silverwash fritillary. And we're baselining, seeing what we've got now. And then in years to come, we'll use that baseline to work against and see how the species assemblage and kind of the carbon storage, the water quality, how it changes over time as the site diversifies and becomes this rewilded unit. And as I'm already over 10 minutes, I'll flick on quickly to this slide. So this is kind of similar to the one I had before, but the one before is very much focused about the landscape side of things, whereas this quote is very much once you add in the people. And so rewilding, it can encourage a balance between people and the rest of nature, so we can thrive together. It can provide opportunities for communities to diversify and create nature-based economies, for living systems to provide the ecological functions on which we all depend, and for people to reconnect with nature. And I think that just sums it up so well. If we're going to succeed in what we're doing, we need to work with nature, work with people, so we can all hit the same goal together. So yeah, thank you for listening for a very brief overview, and yeah, happy to take any questions if we have time.
That was absolutely brilliant, Seb. I think you have covered a tremendous amount in a relatively short space of time. What was really interesting for me in terms of our report was a couple of things. Firstly, was that one of the things we did discover was the vast amount of research that's gone into the degradation of Dorset's land over recent decades that's been carried out at Bournemouth University. Adrian Newton in particular has been leading a number of people, a number of teams for quite a few years now. And one of the exciting things in his reports was where they have identified sites for rewilding. And I think what was really exciting for us is we sort of almost thought that would be probably the main bit of our story, would be that there's lots of sites out there where you can do it. And the fact that you've already come along and this has happened is really been quite encouraging and inspiring. So thank you for that. And the other thing, I think the other link is a couple of things you mentioned. One was the link with the connection to nature, which you mentioned on a couple of times. And again, that's something that we certainly found was apparent as being, people have lost this connection, and that's possibly one of the root causes at how we've managed to get in the mess that we are now. But also the justice issues, the exclusion, the fact that, this isn't that people have just switched off, but there's sort of whole historic reasons for the way that people have been sort of marched into cities, and our lifestyles have changed. So it's really interesting to hear the links to all of those things in what you were describing there. So